So we are excited to have Honeywell, a great old friend, George Karayannis, who is a North American Smart Cities Poobah at Honeywell. He has an incredible journey of smart cities with Lockheed Martin, with Panasonic. He's a former AT&T executive. He was there when the whole freaking internet was invented. So he has gazillion stories, but we're not going to have time for all those tonight. I mean, today, right now. But tonight, when we're doing the drinks after the tour, lots of stories from George. So please give a hand to George Karayannis from Honeywell, please.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, everyone. Let's pull those slides up, please. There we go. So as Andres said, I lead Honeywell's North American Smart Cities team. I've been in this space about 15 years. I've served as an elected official. I helped co-found the Zigbee Alliance and the Open ADR Alliance, and led several smart city teams. And as the comment was made earlier, what is smart cities, right? It's a terrible phrase that we're stuck with. Everyone hates it, but it's not going anywhere. And we very simply define smart cities as whatever our customers define it as. It means something different to everyone. We don't get worried about it. So we'll talk about industrial process control, the evolution of it as it relates to smart cities. So if we look at the evolution of industrial process control, starting in the early 1700s with the invention of steam engines, leapfrogging to the 1920s through the 1950s with Industry 2.0, mass production, really becoming more efficient. Fast forward to the 80s and 90s, and now we've got Industry 3.0 with automation, computing much more intense, the beginning of robotics in a sense. And now we're at Industry 4.0, which integrates cloud computing, artificial intelligence, autonomy, and robotics at an ever-accelerating rate. And what that really means is an enormous increase in the amount of data. And there are many ways to think about and to depict the ever accelerating rate of change. And I believe this really is the defining challenge for all organizations, is being able to absorb this ever accelerating rate of change. In terms of data, this particular image that I borrowed from the Google, right? Starting in the 1400s with the printing press, where knowledge, not data, but knowledge doubled every 400 years. And we just moved through time to the iPhone, which now we have more than 100,000 times the power of the computers that put man on the moon we have in our pocket, right? We walk around with that much power in our hand in such a brief time. And now we're accelerating into the age of artificial intelligence, and where knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. And so really, what does that mean? Next slide. Right? So what are the implications of this ever accelerating rate of change, technological change, social change? What does it mean for work and the definition of a job? How is value defined and created, right? These are foundational questions that have been staple for so long. And here is this nonstop rate of change. What will it mean to be human, right? As we embed more and more technology into our bodies, what will that mean? How will society as a whole learn to adapt to technology? Technology is always ahead of society's ability to absorb technological change. We see that with autonomous vehicles, right? The insurance industry, the laws, they always lag technology and always will. We look at, we heard earlier this week about really incredible autonomous shuttles going on in Brownsville and elsewhere, right? How do we absorb that technology in a meaningful way? And I said it before, right? Our ability, an organization's ability, a city's ability to become adaptive, to understand and absorb this rate of change is what will separate the winners and losers, right? evolution does not go to the strongest. It goes to the most adaptable. And in terms of technology, it's being able to understand these incredible changes, blockchain, autonomy, right? All of this stuff is coming and merging very, very quickly. Now, if we look at how does process control impact cities? Cities are built on process control. The electrical grid, the most complex system man has ever designed, real-time mission-critical system. Traffic systems, increasingly interconnected and increasingly real-time, especially as you deploy vehicle-to-infrastructure technology so that cars and stoplights are now talking to each other, cars talking to cars. And then emergency response, as we see increasingly a need for very effective cross-jurisdictional response to an ever-increasing number of climate disasters. So many of you are familiar with the smart city industry. In North America, it's been a 12-year journey of sorts, punctuated by pilots for the most part. Right? We've got a few point solutions that have been deployed, but really North America has an outsized say in the smart cities market, but they have lagged cities around the world by a wide margin. Countries like China, India, Egypt, they have enormous growth challenges, and the central government simply says, go, and here's the check. And so, as one example, within Honeywell, we've deployed over 75 smart cities around the world, and in some cases, these are greenfield and really useful case studies of how smart city technology can improve the quality of life in a city at scale when it's not just a point solution or a pilot, as we've seen primarily in North America. And so I'll talk briefly about what I believe is the smartest city in the world. It is officially called the Administrative Capital for Urban Development. That's a catchy name, I know. I call it New Cairo. It's about 20 kilometers outside of Cairo. Cairo is incredibly crowded. It is not safe. And so the government of Cairo is creating a new greenfield city. It's 275 square miles. It's 8 million citizens. It's 4 million annual visitors. And it is 50 petabytes of data a year coming from these systems. A petabyte is 1 million gigabytes. That is a staggering amount of data in this city at scale in real time, right? We are managing that. So we'll go to the next slide, and this is just a illustrative systems integration view of what is deployed in the ACUD in Egypt. So Honeywell, our City Suite platform, and I'm not here to talk about that, but it is the IoT and AI integration layer for all of these city systems, and for the most part, we are all of these smart city applications on top of it, including the 311 mobile app that citizens use and the workforce mobile app that city workers use. And the impact of having this unique level of integration at this scale. Response times for citizen inquiries or emergencies reduced by 80%. Energy costs reduced 20%. Crime reduced 20%. The city, for the technologists in here, this will blow your mind. City of 8 million people, one CRM. One CRM across all of these systems. That is astonishing to me, right? Because the city now has a holistic 360-degree view of every system, every meter, every stoplight, everything. And the citizens have a single point of contact for city services. And the innovation and efficiency that is possible with that level of integration, we're never going to see that in a North American city. We're just not, because we're not going to build any greenfield cities. But it can serve as an aspirational level to achieve for some cities as they integrate more and more, or begin to integrate their various city systems, street lighting, meters, stoplights, municipal buildings, all of the above, right? And so what happens when you now extend process control with artificial intelligence? I'll give you 2 use cases. The first is emergency response. So we see right now New York City, the metropolitan area, struggling with extreme flooding, right? It's a real serious life safety issue in the region. And low-lying areas get flooded, whether it's hurricane or the remnants of a hurricane or just the next severe thunderstorm. Many cities struggle with low-lying areas that get flooded quickly. Citizens are unaware or unwilling to pay attention, and they put themselves at risk. They get injured. Emergency response resources have to be dispatched. And so it is quite easy with artificial intelligence to really predict where the next flooding event will be across the city with great precision, and to control the systems, whether they're community message boards or pumping stations or access control gates, if you wanted to do that in some low-lying areas, and bridges, under bridges, et cetera, tunnels. And then provide both mass notification and very localized notification of this event, right? This is a typical use case. Cities do this today in a very crude way. So how can cities now integrate more and more of their systems, add artificial intelligence, get that data in real time and near real time, and essentially respond more efficiently and save people's lives? Really, that's what we're talking about. Another use case is, let's go to the next one. Another use case is public safety. Public safety is a real concern for many cities. Their budgets are stretched. They're not going to be able to just keep hiring police officers. So the addition of artificial intelligence to these traditional data sets allow police departments to predict with very high fidelity pretty much where, when, and what type of crime will occur next. So the integration and the addition of artificial intelligence really creates a force multiplier to the existing police budget and the existing police force. And, you know, yes, it reduces crime and it keeps people safer. And it improves the overall quality of life in that community, right? So this is just another use case of how systems integration and, next slide, please. Systems integration and artificial intelligence extend everyday use cases in a city, right? Really step it up. There's 2 other issues I want to talk about relative to smart cities and data. Every city leader we have spoken to has put social equity at the top of their priority list. They struggle mightily with social equity across this country. And what has that meant? It typically has meant deploying some Wi-Fi in disadvantaged neighborhoods where they can afford it. Maybe hiring an equity manager in the city to look across the departments, look at procurement. Are we really being inclusive, right? It's not intractable, but it's a very challenging issue to solve. And we believe one way to bridge this social equity gap is what we call an energy equity virtual power plant. So for those familiar with the electric industry, a virtual power plant, or VPP, is simply demand-side management. In 5% of the year, everybody's got their air conditioners on, right? It is called peak power, and it is the most expensive power, and utilities have generation facilities on standby 95% of the year to turn them on 5% of the year. It's grossly inefficient, very carbon intensive. And so a virtual power plant, which is becoming fairly commonplace in the utility industry, is really just demand-side management, reducing demand instead of turning on that dirty peaker. Let's go back one. So let's stay on community resiliency. Energy equity. Which one do we have up there? Okay. Energy equity. We'll talk about this one. I think I got them out of sequence, sorry. So we'll talk about energy equity. So we talked about the virtual power plant. An energy equity VPP is a traditional VPP with two differences. It looks at it through the lens of the city, not the utility. Utility's got to be at the table, but it is through the lens of the city, and a subset of the value stream is diverted to low and moderate income households to subsidize hot water heaters, replacement air conditioners, right? These are the most economically vulnerable citizens in a community, and when these energy systems fail, these citizens are generally forced into payday lender scenarios, 30% interest on a 5-year loan. They don't have this cash sitting around, right? And so by cities leaning into a virtual power plant, into demand side management, into demand reduction, taking a sliver of those savings and helping the more economically vulnerable citizens in their community reduce their energy costs, replace their failing energy systems, and in return they simply subscribe those systems into the virtual power plant. It is a win-win-win. Cities get a lower carbon footprint, everybody gets lower energy costs, and cities have a way to meaningfully bridge the social equity gap. This will get mayors reelected, right? I've talked to a few mayors who, the term social equity comes up, it's just not their thing. They don't care about it, right? They just don't care about it. And I say, well, let's look at it this way. It's going to get you reelected. And suddenly they're really excited. I don't judge, I just solve. And utilities are struggling, as many of you know, with reinvention of their business model. How are they going to keep their customers? These cities increasingly have choice. In fact, it's called community choice aggregation. Some cities are leaving the utility. So this is a way for utilities to move forward. It's a way to solve the city's sustainability and equity goals. And just being transparent, it's a good win for Honeywell, right? Being honest. So I think I skipped over community resiliency. So let's go back one slide, please. The other aspect that I wanted to talk on today is community resiliency. We have just experienced, especially the people in the Gulf, another hurricane. So community resiliency is nothing new, right? The concept is not new. The federal government is about to inundate cities, states, and counties with amount of cash we'll never see again in our lifetimes, right? This infrastructure investment, long overdue. It's going to be a substantial amount of investment. And we believe it's really important to help cities think holistically about community resiliency, not just put a battery here, give me some asphalt over there, right? I mean, how can we leverage this infrastructure spending to really provide long-term benefit in these communities? And we believe it's a combination of large, small, and medium resiliency prepackaged, pre-engineered solutions that can be quickly deployed and then replicated not only across the city, but across the country. Because everything we've seen in smart cities is, let's pilot it, let's take these incremental baby steps. And if you believe in climate change, if cities are convinced that climate change is here and increasingly affecting them, then incrementalism is no longer good enough, not even close. We must move much, much faster, and we need to move smarter, not just faster. And so being able to deploy microgrids at water pumping and wastewater treatment plants so people don't have to boil water or run out of water during an outage. Driving resiliency into city hall and community centers so that low thousands of people can gather at one time. Driving it into the more distributed assets that a city has, police and fire stations, where dozens and low hundreds of people might be able to gather in an emergency. Driving it into parks, right? These are, we believe there's a great opportunity to help cities really improve their community resiliency and their social equity. And at the end of the day, cities compete with other cities for citizens and employers. So who can present the highest quality of life? Why should a company or a family move to city X instead of city Y? Right? That's really what cities are competing for. Let's go to the last slide, please. Okay. And so I have a few closing thoughts to leave with everyone here. right? What does smart mean to your stakeholders? There is no dumb city, right? There are cities that are more efficient, more sustainable, safer, and ultimately more attractive, and those will be the ones that thrive. And those that aren't are going to suffer economically, right? From a city perspective, how accessible, secure, and useful is the data, right? These cities are understandably, historically, organized and financed in silos. I get it, it's a very efficient organizational approach. But all of that data is captured and held hostage in these department silos. So we've demonstrated very clearly outside the US how easy it is to get that data out and shared among stakeholders. So how quickly can city leaders unlock the value in that data? And how can they secure that data? And how can they enroll their citizens to understand what data privacy truly means, right? How prepared are these city organizations? How prepared are your organizations? How prepared are you for a future of insanely dizzying rate of technological change, right? We see more change every day. It's the rate, it's not that change is upon us. It's that the rate of change becomes so overwhelming. That's why we have young people, right? They're a little better at it. How ready is your city, is any city, to withstand the ravages of climate change? We believe that cities are woefully underprepared. And that is going to result in an enormous amount of suffering of citizens across the country. So our job is to really help harden our infrastructure and help cities withstand these ravages. And then at the same time, climate change invariably disproportionately affects the most economically vulnerable citizens in communities. It always does. And so how can we help collectively, how can we help city leaders bridge this social equity divide, right? These are very large issues for cities to grapple with, and we try to help cities think through and address them so that they can move forward and apply technology where it makes sense. But it's no longer about technology. It's about the thoughtful use of technology to improve process, to improve innovation, and increasingly to improve the resiliency of our communities and the quality of life so that we can continue to thrive as a country. So those are my comments. We're going to have the panel come up, I believe, next. Andres, wherever you are. And I believe we wanted to hold questions for the panel. So thank you all very, very much.